Hello, and thanks for taking the time to listen to Reimagining Cyber. New episodes of the podcast drop every Wednesday. So to make sure you never miss a show, do hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen. You can also find us on the @Reimagining Cyber YouTube channel.
Welcome back to Reimagining Cyber. My name is Ben, and today we have a really interesting one. Tyler Moffitt is joining us again, and we're talking about something that's kind of been floating around in cybersecurity for a while now, but it feels like it's hitting a tipping point: identity. Tyler, good to have you back. How are you doing?
Doing well. And this one, talking about identity, it's been building really for years now. Even with AI being the big, giant, shiny 800-pound gorilla in the room, identity feels like we're at a new point. We need to talk about it clearly and identify it and talk to you about it more, because that's really the new attack surface, right? It's not just the new perimeter. I mean, it's failing. And so just breaking that down briefly, what I mean, the entire model that we've built around trusting identity, usernames, passwords, MFA in some cases, like you name it, attackers are just walking right through it or subverting it entirely now.
These are pretty bold statements you're making, Tyler. When you say that identity is failing, what does that actually look like in real attacks?
Yeah, so we've always traditionally talked about attackers as like breaking in, right? Exploiting vulnerabilities, dropping malware, all the noisy, important things that everyone talks about and, probably went to school and to learn about. And things have changed now, right? That's not really the dominant pattern anymore. Right now, they come right in. They log in. They don't really break in anymore. And so they use stolen credentials, even like the session. We've talked about this before, how like there's a marketplace for like cookies and OAuth tokens. And AI has helped definitely with social engineering at getting and scraping all of this stuff. And so, they log in. They look like a legitimate user the entire time and sort of defeat the whole purpose.
So that's where this phrase comes from. Attackers aren't hacking, they're logging in.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, but it's true, it's accurate, and it's kind of changing everything. Because if your entire security model is basically just built around, is this a valid user, you kind of already lost.
So then why now? Why does it feel like this is accelerating all of a sudden? To be honest, I've got a pretty good idea.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things here, and so I'll just break them down. First and foremost, easiest is the AI supercharging everything, especially phishing. We have a threat report coming out where we basically see like over 200% increase in phishing in this year alone. And don't get me wrong, phishing grows year over year. It hasn't not grown in the 15 years I've been tracking it, but we're growing at levels that are just insane. More importantly, it's not just volume, okay? It's the effectiveness, the personalization, right? And now they can now mimic writing styles, reference real business context, target individuals at scale. I mean, you give it enough data as it is with everything you're sharing on social media. It's really easy to sort of build a profile, and phishing is now turned into spear phishing. And that's one thing that we saw in our threat report that we're going to be releasing here in, a couple of weeks, is that it dominates. It used to be about half of phishing was spear phishing, but now it's like we're approaching like 70-80%. And that might close the gap even further of just all phishing being spear phishing.
So we're not getting those Nigerian prince emails anymore, are we?
Not even close, right? We're talking about emails that are going to pretend and look like, your boss, your coworker, your vendor. They're context aware, many times can even reference things. I mean, it's just a huge shift, right? And so the second big thing is attackers don't even need your passwords anymore, right? They're stealing the tons of info stealers. We talk about that in the nastiest malware. We talk about that in the threat report. But the session cookies, the browser tokens, the auth tokens. So where even if you have multi-factor authentication, if I steal your session, right, I bypass it completely. These OAuth tokens, they work through password resets. So if I'm able to steal a valid session token, even if you change your password, that session token will still work and log me in. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's important. It's a part, I think, that a lot of people don't realize. They think that MFA solves this.
Right, MFA helps. Don't get me wrong. It's critical. Everybody should be doing it. Everybody's heard tons and tons about it, but it's not the silver bullet. It wasn't even a silver bullet when it was sort of talked about as if it was like a silver bullet. But, basically attackers are just they're going around it and circumventing it now, right? Instead of going through it or beating it. The next one I would talk about is, or the last one, I guess, the third piece is info stealer malware, which I referenced a little bit earlier, but it's huge. Seriously, info stealer malware is like the quiet underground ecosystem that supplies most of the criminal activity that they've got. They're designed literally to go after it. Dump credentials from memory as they're typed in because they're sitting and waiting for you to hit your keyboard. Steal cookies, extract tokens, grab those save sessions, and then all of it gets sold in these marketplaces, right? And that's the big marketplace now. You literally will sell access to an environment.
So like an identity supply chain, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, really good way to put it. I mean, the entire underground market ecosystem full of just, like I said, here's valid logins with an active session. Go use it. You buy this, I give it to you. You can log right in, right? It's pretty scary.
So then, Tyler, if all of this is happening, what does it mean for how organizations think about trust?
I would say it just breaks the idea of a trusted user, right? We've always just assumed that if the credentials are valid, trust the activity. It's good. It's green light, whitelisted, go through it, right? That assumption now is no longer safe, right? We have to assume now in 2026 that every identity could be compromised.
That sounds like zero trust to me.
Dropping a bold term. But, here's the thing, though. Like a lot of companies, they say they're doing zero trust, but in reality, they're still just trusting identity too much.
What does that look like in practice then?
Yeah, it's things like long-lived sessions, over-permissionized accounts, no re-authentication for sensitive accounts, and no monitoring of the session's behavior. And honestly, this sounds almost identical to the best practices we've gave, I think, a session or two ago where we were talking about AI and the over-permissioning of the agents that you would connect. You have to do that not only for an AI, but an actual user now because of this compromise and shift that we're seeing.
You mentioned social engineering earlier, Tyler. How is that playing in? Give me a bit more detail.
Yeah, so it's definitely relevant, and if anything, it's huge now. I mean, these help desk attacks, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Scattered Spider, the group. They sort of made it real big and sort of started a new trend late last year. When the IT help desk impersonation, they're exploding again, right? Where attackers call in, impersonate employees, and reset those credentials and sort of pretend to be the employee, and the organization, the help desk, IT lets them in, and then they're in. They've got at least one compromise on one computer in the environment that's allowed. And that's usually all they need to start the process. And then, move laterally, case the joint, find out who they've hit or what impact they have right now. And, maybe set up some malware for, like I said, scraping those, credentials, like installing malware for pivoting and making sure you can collect, like, let's say, domain controller credentials. And from there, then you can really, explode and gain access. And all this stuff happens silently before ransomware drop. Ransomware is the noisiest drop for sure, right? But it always comes last. And so we're talking about the middle stage stuff that really no one really gives enough attention to. And so I feel like it's important to talk about.
That feels like some pretty old school techniques going on there.
It is, right? The whole like IT help desk reset, but it works, right? And now it's enhanced essentially with the entire profile of an employee you want to impersonate from all these data breaches. How many of you have received an email from your carrier or somebody you shopped with or whatever, where your information has been exposed and sold essentially on the dark web? All the different places you've shopped from or rely as a customer for, like me. I mean, I was an AT&T customer like a decade ago, and how many times have I gotten emails on that information being leaked? Or it doesn't matter. There's so many different opportunities with you interacting digitally on the web or just in general in cyberspace. You're going to be compromised multiple times over. And so that information is available for people to buy for pennies on the dollar in many cases, right? And now you're going to power that with AI scraping to be able to collect all that on an individual. Then if they have any samples, they can have AI generated voices to help impersonate you. So the attacker now, essentially sounds convincing and has all of this information readily available.
And this is where that deep fake stuff can creep in as well, I guess.
Well, yeah, deep fake sort of, the impersonation has sort of already been there, but it's now getting set into overdrive, right? We're not quite into the massive scale yet, but like they're working and tweaking on it right now. Like they're building the bomb for it. And it's only a question of when it blows up, if that makes sense. The voice cloning, the video impressions, we share enough as it is on social media with all the information that the data collection, using AI to, scrape all of that and build a profile that's supposed to be you to impersonate you. It's going to make identity verification extremely hard.
Okay, then. So what are organizations getting wrong? Where are they missing the mark right now?
I would say over-reliance on single controls. They deploy multi-factor authentication or a single sign-on, and they think that's it. Dust my hands. I'm done. I've covered the best practices of what was told to me, and that's it. And a lot of the times that's not really, from a compliance perspective, they feel like they're in the clear, right?
But they're not layering it, though, are they?
Well, they're not really considering that they need to. Security works best in layers. Absolutely. You can't assume that any one layer is going to be 100% effectiveness. And I feel like most people understand that and know that no layer is 100%. So stack them, right? The whole point is like to have endpoint security, DNS filtering, identity controls, user awareness, any other area or gap that you might have, add another layer. And that's the purpose. Because when you combine them, you're reducing risk. Again, the 0% breach or hack or malware execution, it's a unicorn. You'll never retrieve it, but it's the posture of assuming that it's not a question of if, but when these will be tested or when one of these layers will fail. Having that posture and stacking those layers is effectively how you get as close to 0% as you possibly can. And with that posture, you're set up for success, way more than you are set up for failure.
Okay, Tyler, you have successfully scared the life out of our loyal listeners. They'll be thinking, what on earth should I do? What actually works? Give them the answer.
A few key things. Shorten those trust windows. That's huge. The session lifetimes and requiring rethought authentication. I know that it's annoying and people just want to log in once for like a week or even a day. And honestly, like reducing that time that it's good is almost all of the risk here, because if I can scrape a session token and sell it on the dark web and it's valid for a week or whatever, or however many days, like that's a really big problem, right? The fact that something access can be bought through password resets and is good for days potentially, you're doing it wrong, Another thing is monitor behavior, right? Not just the logins, but impossible travel. If you've got somebody logging in from that identity is logging in from multiple different locations, and you're like, even with the Concorde jet, they couldn't be in those locations. That should raise a flag. That should be an alert a human sees, abnormal access patterns, data movement, exfiltration, you name it. All that stuff should be visible and, should be alerted if there's any change in it. And locking down those tokens and sessions, like the audit your OAuth apps, limit the token scope, right? Revoke unused sessions for sure. That's a big one. I mean, it sounds very similar to what we've talked about when you're connecting an AI agent that's actionable and can do these things. You want to, because those AI, agents are essentially running loop logic, constantly can make changes. And so you want to make sure they have access to only what they need and for a little amount of time before you allow it again. You don't want just full unlimited unfeathered access. You should be doing the same thing with your employees. And that brings us to the final point, which is, treat identity as compromised by default, right? Again, this is a security posture, right? This is the assumption of when, not if, right? So verifying continuously and don't assume trust. And bringing it all together, layering your defense, we talked about it. No single control or layer is enough anymore. And You should already know this. So this should be basics here. There really shouldn't be one sort of type of layer that you hang your hat on going, we're covered, because no, you're not, it's definitely a posture change, shift there, if you will, dynamically on the assumption of when, if that makes sense.
Finally, then, Tyler, I always like to get you to summarize the entire conversation in just one pithy sentence. What would you say is the takeaway here?
I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try. Like the entire security industry is usually built around the idea that identity equals trust, right? You trust these users as they log in. And I would say that that's really effectively no longer true because, now 2026, identity is the primary attack surface. And so that's what you need to consider. It's a huge shift. And the organizations that adapt to that, they're the ones that are going to stay ahead.
Fantastic stuff as always, Tyler. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
And for everybody listening, if you're not already thinking about identity this way, then now is the time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Reimagining Cyber. Goodbye.